And if you look at the topic, I deliberately chose that topic. Somebody tackled me on Facebook. I was like, no, the Queen or something. Somebody may ask, how do you mean when you say the Queen owes us nothing? Well, the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, passed on the 8th of September. It's packed, I guess, unexpectedly, because it appears that the conversation that ensued relating to colonialism and, the British imperialism, especially in Africa, I guess many did not expect that, but it happened. So the conversation was on. I really was not so interested in the conversation for reasons I don't want to get into. But seeing the Independence Day of Nigeria drawing near, I just thought, the thought just packed again. And I was like, okay, maybe I should use the opportunity to look at this issue. Most prominent of all of those outrage is the Nigerian professor who's based in the United States, Uju Anya. And I am particularly not, I must confess, I'm not comfortable with our method, choice of words. And people have said, people have a right to be angry. People have a right to express themselves. Of course, I do agree. I agree that people have a right to express themselves. I agree that people have a right to be angry. But I also believe that irrespective of the feeling, we must also care about how we engage, especially for somebody in the academic. You want to, think that she probably would have been able to devise a better method of, instigating a debate concerning matters of injustice and, how certain persons have been treated, in the past. I thought that she could have used better methods, and even the choice of words. I thought that she had a choice in terms of the kind of words she used and, those vile, vicious, attack. I don't think that it was the best way to go. But having said that, does the Queen have a question to answer? Well, maybe she does, but let's even look at the Civil War, because Ujuanya is obviously of Eastern extraction, Igbo. She obviously had a taste of the Civil War. At least she had parents and, older ones who experienced it. And I can understand all of the anger. But again, I want to reiterate that I feel and I think that looking at who she is and her level of enlightenment, her level of exposure, I would think that there probably should have been a better way of instigating that engagement. I do not buy her methods, her choice of words. I do not. And again, it's the fact that Nigeria experienced colonialism. The fact that Nigeria was a victim of British imperialism. That's the reason why we are where we are today. Does that account for the underdevelopment of Africa and Nigeria in particular? Why is Nigeria where it is? Why is Africa where it is today? Is colonialism, British or French or European imperialism, the major cause of that? Let's even go back to the Civil War. I hope we know that beyond Britain, especially in the early stages of the war, that Russia also gave us very serious help in that war. So it was not just a British affair. Nigeria had to rely strongly, on Russia to support with weapons. Nigeria used a lot of Russian help in that war. So it was not just about the England or Britain. The USA, where the Uju is based now, and she's a lecturer there, the USA was actually indifferent. They were neither here nor there in the war. So they didn't support Biafra either. Addressing imperialism and neocolonialism, I think it is high time that Africans, and Nigeria in particular, look beyond what happened in colonialism. I think it is rather quite inappropriate to still want to blame the Europeans and the imperialists for the predicament that we find ourselves as a country. I have a challenge with the fact that for every opportunity we're having to call out the Europeans for the much that they did during colonialism. Of course, yeah, maybe there needs to be some reparation, maybe. But you see, Queen Elizabeth II herself, I guess she was not more than, just a ceremonial head. Well, you could say she could have done something. Maybe she could have done something. Maybe she did something that didn't see the light of the day, because, like I said, she was nothing more than a ceremonial head. How much could the Queen really do? Maybe she could have done more. Maybe. I'm not here holding brief for the Queen, but I want to say that Africans must begin to look beyond colonialism, bearing in mind that it is not only Africa that was colonized. Nigeria is not the only country that was colonized. Many of the countries that our people go to today, they also suffered colonialism. The Indians, the Chinese, even the Chinese, the Koreans, they were victims of colonialism too. Nigeria is not the only country that suffered imperialism. The Asians have long moved on. The Indians, come on, we can't even forget Mahatma Gandhi and the much that he did to pull India out of the claws of British imperialism and colonialism. They've long moved on. The Chinese have long moved on. Today, China is ably a world power. Even the South American number of countries suffered colonial rule too. Many of them have moved on. This idea of always wanting to point fingers at every given opportunity, I don't think that is the way to go. That is not the way to go. This may offend many, but let me quickly inform you that if you want to even look deeply, I believe the best Nigeria ever had, all round, all sectors, was the much that Britain left. The best road network Nigeria ever had, the best set of roads Nigeria ever had, was the much that Britain left. We may have expanded the network. We have more roads, but what is the quality, of the roads? We are looking at development. The best form of development Nigeria ever had was the much that the Queen now left. The same Queen that people want to be crucified. Again, I'm not holding brief for Britain. The best civil service Nigeria ever had was the much that Britain left. The best in terms of quality of goods, economy that Nigeria ever had was the much that Britain left. Go and look at the quality of goods in Nigerian markets. Super substandard. And this quality has been dropping since 1960 till date. Go and look at consumables, building materials and all of those. Substandard, super substandard. That is the much that we've been able to do for ourselves. The best record labels in Nigeria, talking about music and entertainment, were the much that Britain left. After they left, we were just literally going back. The best electricity Nigeria ever had was the much that Britain left. This is a fact. We may have expanded, but what are we expanding? What is the quality of what we are expanding? We're basically just growing and not developing. So you really think that we should be blaming the Queen? Is that what you really think? I had to save, the comment by Uju Anya. I want to believe that you're already abreast with the information. As she says, I heard the chief monarch of a thieving, raping, genocidal empire is finally dying. May her pain be excruciating. Much later, she says, if anyone expects me to express anything but disdain for the monarch who supervised a government that sponsored the genocide that massacred and displaced half my family, and the consequences of which those alive today are still trying to overcome, you can keep wishing upon a star. Again, I said, Uju Anya has a right to be angry, even though I feel that there's a better way to engage, and probably even get solutions. I don't think engaging like this will help anybody. It won't. But again, I think that we must begin to look inward, especially as Nigeria is marking our 62nd independence. We want to really look inward as a nation. And beyond just Nigeria, the Negro race. I believe that Africa's problem is within it. Instead of looking and pointing fingers outside and thinking that other people are our problems, I think that the bigger part of our problem lies within the continent, within ourselves. Africa must take responsibility for our development. Colonialism had its, effect, but I can say, I tell you categorically that colonialism is not why we are where we are. It's way deeper than that. There's something fundamentally wrong with the way we think and the way we see ourselves. I think that is where to start. Yeah, reparation. Maybe we need reparation. I think that we need to stand on a good moral ground to be asking for reparation and to be asking for other people to apologize for the much that they did to us. Because the fact of the matter is that we're actually doing worse to ourselves. So Africa's problem is way more within it than it is outside. After independence, narrowing it down to Nigeria, after independence, how much have we done for ourselves? We live in a continent where our leaders take us for it. Right now, we are pointing fingers at other people. You're pointing fingers at the Queen. How about your leaders? We live in a country or a continent where our leaders take our monies, our resources, take it to the same place, to Britain, to Europe, to the United States, stash it there. Nigeria is still reaping from the much that Sani Abacha embezzled and stashed abroad. Just last month, we received another $22 million. And right now, we have a president who does not even have the courage to call Abacha a thief, an embezzler. In fact, we have a president who actually idolizes Abacha, who sees Abacha as a mentor. So for me, where to start is to learn to take our leaders to account. We must learn as a people, as Africans, to bring our leaders to account before we start, pointing fingers and calling people out, talking about what other people did in colonialism and imperialism. There's a lot that we have to do at home. There's a lot that we have to do. We need to start calling leaders to account. We need to start getting interested in the polity, the much happening around us. For every little thing we want to try, we want to run abroad, we want to run to the same UK, and yet we are pointing fingers at the Queen. So, if you ask me, I think the first place to start is not to call out the Queen. The first place to start is to call out ourselves. And when I say ourselves, it starts from getting involved in the polity and holding your leaders to account. We encourage our leaders to be irresponsible. We condone irresponsibility on the part of our leaders. We don't encourage our leaders to do what is right. And we do this in many ways. Before we even get to the leader, ourselves as citizens, how do we engage the system? What are we doing to contribute to the growth and development of Nigeria? Or how much are we doing to contribute to the decadence in the system? The average Nigerian feels that, it is the politician out there, the man in the government house, that is to blame for everything. We don't think we're doing something too. How about the way civil servants behave in their offices? Maybe we should start from there. How about the attitudes to your work? This idea of feeling, like government work is, public government work is nobody's work. We can do it anyhow. I was, in a public office the other day, and somebody from one office to another trying to get, civil servants to attend to you, and then you see the attitude. Somebody's on the phone supposed to be attending to you, and you can tell that this is not an official call. This call can actually wait. You're having a personal call, and you have somebody you're supposed to be attending to waiting, and you're just wasting time and having a good time. You don't think that has contributed to where we are, that attitude? So before we start blaming those outside, we really need to look at ourselves, because I believe that foreigners will not come and fix Nigeria. We will fix our country for ourselves. So the Queen, I insist, owes us nothing. No, she doesn't owe us nothing. I personally believe that we should let the Queen rest in peace. And we should start looking at ourselves. Imperialism. I want to go back a bit. Slave trade. Even before colonialism, you had slave trade. Why did slave trade even happen? Why did slave trade last for the time that it did? Because they were willing accomplices amongst the victims. We are the same reason why slave trade lasted. We are the same reason why slave trade, thrived. You had Africans selling their brothers, selling their people for money. You had kings selling their subjects for money, for resources, for gains. The European or the white man couldn't have just come from his continent to make Africans slave. No, to take Africans away. No, that couldn't happen. We had to also be a willing accomplice. We had to cooperate. The same reason why we are having the decadence in the likes of fraud, internet fraud. People are literally sending their children, their wards to go learn to be fraudsters, internet fraudsters. Why? Because money. We can get gains. The same reason people sold their people into slavery to be taken to distant land for money. So there's always the role of the African. The African has a fundamental problem. We need to first look at ourselves as a people, as a race. It is not a mistake that no African country today has achieved any level of remarkable development. No African country, not even South Africa. I guess the most that South Africa has, achieved is probably because, you had the Europeans there as, citizens and natives. How much have we achieved for ourselves as a race, the Negro race? So it should trigger some thoughts. We need to think as a people, what do we want to do with ourselves and our country? There are many questions that we must answer. So this whole idea of wanting to point fingers and blame, I am not very interested in the blame game. I am persuaded that if we fix ourselves, the external factors will be a smaller problem. I don't think that Europe can stop Africa from developing. I don't think that the United States can stop Africa from developing. I don't think the colonialists and the imperial powers, as they were, can stop Africa from developing. They couldn't stop the Chinese. They couldn't stop the Japanese. They couldn't stop the Koreans. They couldn't stop the Indians. The Indians are doing quite well. Before this course started, I was going to find my Walter Rodney book. I don't know where. I couldn't find it. I read Walter Rodney too. We can cry all we like how Europe underdeveloped Africa. But I tell you the truth, Africa is doing more underdevelopment to our continent than Europe is doing. What is my position? My position is that, and my submission is that Africa will have to take responsibility. The much that is happening in Africa in terms of decadence and underdevelopment, Africa is to blame. We are to blame. And we must take responsibility and take action. And this is a call, this is a challenge. I'm challenging young people of this generation, Africans of this generation. Let us not buy into this blame game, this thinking that other people are a problem. The white man is not your problem. Every time we hear of Nigerians being discriminated abroad, even within Africa, you hear of xenophobia in South Africa and a couple of other African countries. You hear, just recently, you see how, the UAE, sending Nigerians back, humiliating Nigerians, immigrants. You want to ask yourself, don't we do worse to ourselves here? Don't we do more injustice, worse injustice to ourselves? Don't Nigerians suffer worse injustices in their land, in their own country? We must solve that first before we start looking outside. Do you know the number of people who die needlessly in Nigeria every day? And let me inform you, the figures you see in the media is largely underreported. The figures are highly compromised. They are usually higher. The needless deaths, the avoidable deaths in Nigeria every day. So don't you think we want to look inward first? I think there's a lot that we can do. We live in a country where a 20-something-year-old can beat up a 60-something-year-old and get him to drink flood water because he's wearing the uniform of the Nigerian army. That is what Nigerians do to Nigerians. You want to blame the Queen for that? No, you can't blame the Queen for that. Nigeria, we need to reorientate ourselves. We need to start seeing this respect for our race, respect for ourselves, the dignity of the human person. We need to understand and learn that. The average Nigerian gets power and wants to oppress. The average Nigerian gets a position and wants to oppress his fellow Nigerian. Instead of seeing how he can use his position, his power, his influence to develop the system, to contribute positively. But we usually want to oppress one another. You want to blame the Queen for that? You can't blame the Queen for that. So the injustices we do to ourselves, we need to start looking at that. The discrimination we do to ourselves, that is where to start. Africa's problem is more within it than it is outside. I think we need to start looking at the fact that it appears that the black man has a fundamental issue that he must first deal with. Because of this call today, I had to go dig up something I posted on Facebook about 2 years ago. I just read to you so that you probably get my thoughts and where I am driving at. I posted this on 15th of September, 2020. Now just listen, it says, growing up as a black man in Africa, as well as a student of history, I noticed the biggest stranglehold on the average black man are these: selfishness, sentiments, that's shallowness, short-sightedness. Religion, that is pure religion, is supposed to release one from this stranglehold. But what we largely have in Africa is religion plus the 3 S's. Therefore, what has resulted from this ungodly mixture are the following: religion without righteousness or compassion, education without intellect, politics without ideology, business without integrity, and so on. And I made a call here. I said, I urge the black men of this generation, deliver yourself from these vices. Do not succumb to sustaining this ungodly cycle of backwardness in our continent. Black man, emancipate yourself from mental slavery, renew your mind and be free. Renew your mind and be free. Renew your mind and be free. The Queen is not our problem. Colonialism ended like decades ago. And I repeat, the best that we have as a country, the best that we ever had, actually was the much that Britain left. I go over it again. The best road network we ever had, in terms of standard, the best we ever had was the much that Britain left. The best electricity system we ever had was the much that Britain left. I love you to engage me on this. I stand to be corrected. Looking at quality, standard, the best industrialization we ever had was the much that Britain left. They said the pace, they said the standard, but could we sustain it? We couldn't. We couldn't sustain it. They said the path, we couldn't walk in it. So you can't blame the Queen. The Queen is not your problem. We must look within as a people. As we celebrate another Independence Day, it is time to begin to look inward. I'm particularly very excited to see the level of interest we are seeing now. I've said this many times. I'm very excited to see the level of engagement, especially from the ranks of the young people, that we are seeing in the polity, unlike the obvious apathy that used to dominate. Now we are seeing young people showing some interest in the polity, and that is good. And I want to also use Medium to congratulate and give kudos to all of those who got involved in the NSAS and all of those who put in their efforts, who instigated and were part of the planning of all of that. I want to give kudos, even though you can say that the NSAS probably could not go all the way to achieve much more. Again, you want to also ask yourself, what was even the goal? But at least we can say that we saw Nigerians coming out to speak against injustice, irrespective of the obvious dangers that in doing that posed. That is good. That is how a nation develops. To see that Nigerians can come out in unison like that. So I want to give kudos to all of you who participated in that, I don't want to call it uprising now, in that protest, in that act, in that event. It should be encouraged, it should be sustained. We need to tell our leaders that we are ready to take them to account. That is very pivotal in achieving development. Europe, the United States, and every other country developing only got there, only achieved that, only were able to achieve that feat because they built a culture of bringing leaders to account. So we're going to have to look beyond this blame game. It's not going to take us nowhere. It's never. To understand that Africa's problem is more within it than it is outside. That is where to start. Acknowledging the fact that there is a fundamental problem with us as Africans. When you acknowledge that, then 50% of the problem is solved. And then you begin to take action. When I say action, it actually starts from engaging the polity, engaging government, engaging the system. Whether you want to travel, out of the continent or not, even as a diaspora, engage the system. And I know that a number of diaspora Nigerians, Nigerians based abroad, they are doing quite well. They are doing the most that they can do. And that is good. That should be sustained. Instead of the blame game. The Queen is not the problem. If I believe that colonialism could have been sustained, people say, well, they probably had enough and they left. No, I don't want to believe that the French and the Britons were fed up of exploitation. I don't want to believe that they were fed up. No, they weren't fed up. There was still a lot of resources to tap. There was still a lot of benefits that we accrue from staying back. Obviously, they succumbed to resistance. And let's not forget, especially in Nigeria, the North never even wanted independence anyways. So Ahmadu Bello thought that the North wasn't ready. They weren't ready for leadership. They didn't have the intellect, the educational wherewithal. They didn't think we were prepared for leadership. Maybe the entire country wasn't actually. But you see, we were able to get them to go out. And what have we been able to do with power? What have we done? What have we been able to do for ourselves? Beyond the much that Britain left, we've literally been going back. Our politics has been going back. The economy has been going back since 1960. Civil service, public service has been going back. The values have dropped. The standard has dropped remarkably. Public infrastructure, the standard has dropped remarkably. I keep saying this, the best we ever had was the much that Britain left. So this is the time to sit down as a people and look at ourselves and speak truth to ourselves and acknowledge that we have not done well and that we have harmed our countries by our own self. And we are the ones that will fix it. I want to say that I'm quite excited. I'm quite impressed with the much that I am seeing preceding the 2023 presidential election. If we sustain this, I have reasons to believe in the near future, truly, we will be on that path to recover the much that is lost and build on that and truly work to building or achieving a truly developed society. There's a lot to be done. From our mindset, the way we think, to the institutions, our police security system. I personally believe that if this democracy is going to grow, if we're ever going to achieve anything as a democratic nation, we need to look at our security institutions, especially the police. No democracy will develop without a decent police institution. The kind of police we have now is not going to work. Nigerians need to understand the value of human rights. We don't have a police who understands that and who can enforce that. The dignity of the human person must be re-established in our minds. Very important. We don't value ourselves. We don't respect ourselves. Our rights, basic human rights. We need a police who understands true enforcement of laws and not this excessive coercion that we have. So for this democracy to grow, we are going to have to look at, if I have the opportunity to be president, or if I ever have the powers to influence all of that, my very first target will be the Nigerian police. We need to reorganize that institution. Very important. We need to reorganize our security institutions, especially the Nigerian police. It will go a long way to developing our democracy, and it will have far-reaching impact on society and on how we see ourselves and how we relate socially, beyond even prevention of crime. Of course, that is a given. You expect the police to prevent crime and all of that. But you see, how we see ourselves, respect, mutual respect, upholding rights, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of association. Today we are still grappling with, bill is free and bill is not free. We're still grappling with that after all these years. You think I can't go to a police station and be sure that you will not have to pay to get some, bail. We're still grappling with basic law enforcement matters. We have to deal with that instead of blaming the queen. What's my point? My point is that the black man, we must hold ourselves to account. We must hold ourselves to account as a people. We must hold ourselves responsible for the much that has happened in the continent, and we must take significant steps to moving away from where we are to where we should be, instead of blaming. What's up, my Nigerian people? How una dey? My name is Efe Cole Amadin, a political activist, public affairs commentator and writer, multimedia practitioner, and business person. My goal is to promote political participation and awareness, influence public opinion for national development. I'll be bringing you updates and insightful analysis on developments in the Nigerian political sphere